Again, wait until I start a video to start cutting your grass.
So I was taking a walk the other day
when my cousin called me and we started discussing what album was Drake's best. Two things I want to get across in this video. A revision to some of the points I made in my Drake Overrated video. My opinions are still going to be the same, but there are just a few little details that I want to touch more on, offer a few more perspectives, and hopefully give you a little bit more insight as to what I was talking about, because I don't want it to come across like I don't see the point in Drake's moves in the industry. And number two, to give you guys my favorite Drake album, because after heavy conversation and arguing with my cousin the other day, I felt like it's necessary for me to at least tell people I do have a favorite Drake project. So what is his favorite project? Let me know in the comment section below what it is to you. But the general consensus is that Drake's best project is Take Care. And although I will agree that that was a dope album and it definitely showcased, can you stop, okay? Can you get away from my house? Although I think that was a really dope album and I think it was a dope project from Drake, I definitely think that in the future he would have projects that would definitely wow me or have a little bit more of a cohesive feel to them. It was like kind of the record that put Drake on the map, solidifying him as an artist. Like a lot of people consider that to be Drake's classic, which in my opinion, I feel like all artists need at least one. You need one classic and you're good for the majority of your career. That doesn't mean release one classic and the rest of your albums can be trash. It just means I need something to go back to in case I want to see you at your best again. That's not to sleep on any of his other projects like So Far Gone, even though I wish that would stay So Far Gone, and Thank Me Later, which also include a heap of Drake's biggest songs like Over, Find Your Love, Fancy, even Miss Me was a popular song for its time. I know every word to that song. Drake's never been an artist that's really looked for cohesiveness when he's tried to put together a project. It's always been about how he's been in the industry or how he's feeling. Nothing has had really that conceptual feeling to it other than Views. Actually, I feel like it's his most conceptual album, the album that Drake kind of keeps the whole vibe of the album within his hometown, within his city. It's the setting, he says it's in wintertime. You can definitely get that vibe when you're listening to it. But Drake is not known necessarily for cohesive projects. Now, if you're asking me what my favorite Drake project is, I wore these glasses just so I could take them off. I would probably say it's between Nothing Was the Same and If You're Reading This Is Too Late. Nothing Was the Same was another project where Drake had a bunch of singles on there that really pushed his career forward. Like Just Hold On, We're Going Home, Started From the Bottom, even All Me. Nothing Was the Same was the album I felt like could have been Drake's classic had it been a little bit more confident. Within the album, it seemed as though Drake was off in this world where he didn't 100% know what was going on. Although he was driven, it didn't feel like he was 100% confident within his own ability and career. It seemed like he was trying to, but it didn't come across as genuine confidence. This came across as more or less fabricated or kind of forced confidence, if you will. It was still a really great project. I loved songs like Wu-Tang Forever, The Language. I remember how popular the song Come Through was. When Vine was still an app that people could use, people were going crazy over it, doing these 7-second clips of how the effect of the beat drop on Come Through affected everyone. It was a dope song for its time and it definitely held a lot of weight. And I liked the song a lot because Drake actually came through as a solid singer on that record. But again, on the album, it's not that he was a transformative artist and it's nothing that we hadn't seen him do before. So that's why I felt like it probably wouldn't have been a classic, but it definitely was one of his most successful albums in terms of a sound and having tons of hits. Now, when you compare it to like If You're Reading This Is Too Late, If You're Reading This Is Too Late to me was one of Drake's best projects because it had that feeling of just overflowing confidence and just gutso and I don't take anything. I'm gonna be in your face. I'm gonna be right here. Step to me. I dare you. That's the vibe that Drake had in that album. I'm sorry, mixtape. He had a couple of hits on there too. He had Used To. I don't know how often that was played on the radio. I'm pretty sure a majority of the songs were played on the radio, but the Know Yourself song was probably the most popular one on If You're Reading This Is Too Late. Although it wasn't my favorite, I definitely agree and concur with a lot of people that it was one of his most popular songs for that mixtape. That mixtape made me so happy because for the first time I felt like I could be confident being a Drake fan. Like people wouldn't call him soft anymore. Like, even though he didn't have to be a street guy, he could still be confident in himself and say to other rappers, other artists, other people who are putting his name out there, step to me, because you won't do it. I'm up here, you're down here. That's how he portrayed himself with that project, and I loved it. And it felt like a bit of an evolution for Drake because we hadn't really seen that side of him before. I mean, we got glimpses of it and little shudders here and there, but as a full project of just confidence, we hadn't really seen that from Drake before. You don't really expect a dude who made Find Your Love to be on the same song or hop on the same... Dude, I swear to... I guess what I'm trying to say is, you don't really expect the same dude who was on... That's what I'm saying is, you don't expect the dude who made Find Your Love to be on the energy vibe that he was on If You're Reading This Is Too Late. That's why I loved it so much. And being a fan of Drake to that extent and knowing that he could be confident with himself with songs like Six God, I felt confident saying I was a Drake fan, and I was highly anticipating his next project, which was Views. If you were a fan of Drake for If You're Reading This Is Too Late, I don't honestly believe that you would like Views. Because it had some dance hall tracks and that, you know, it was a little bit of a slower album, a little bit more of a too overly sensitive Drake. It was almost like Drake reverted when he made that album, as if he took 2 steps forward and then took 3 steps back. He seemed less confident, less sure of himself by making songs about relationships where he wasn't 100% in control, and if he was, it was in such a weird, really weird controlling way, like everybody knowing Drake for hiding the car keys from his female, even though you could just tell her, don't take my car keys. He hides his own. My friend actually had to put me onto that because I wasn't even listening to the song like that, and he noticed it, and I was like, damn, you're right. It's just one of those things that I feel like Drake should just toss under the rug. Not saying the album was just a flop because it sold 1 million, but what I expected and what it gave me were 2 totally different things, and I think Drake even knows that. I didn't mean to skip What a Time to Be Alive, but that was probably one of the most average mixtapes I've ever heard in my entire life. I mean, Jumpman was cool, Big Rings was cool, but that's pretty much it in my opinion. There were songs on there I could see people enjoying, but not enough for it to be a full mixtape. I think Drake and Future could have pretty much took the best songs off that project and just released them, and people would have been happy with that. But there are far too many average at best songs on that project for me to even include it in this roundup. Which brings me to the most recent album, More Life. I'm sorry, it's a playlist. How do I explain my relationship with you? You guys know how I felt about More Life. You all saw my reaction to it. You all saw my review of it. It wasn't necessarily that I didn't like the project. I just thought that for Drake to make something like this and then market it as a playlist, it already had me a little bit ticked off going into the project because you're kind of getting away with selling an album as a playlist, because in my opinion I've only made 1 playlist in my entire life, and none of those songs on that playlist included Drake. And for you to make a playlist and give people a playlist and say this is what you're gonna like is a little bit preemptive in my opinion. What I do want to touch on, which is that difference in perspective I was talking about in the beginning of this video, is what Drake tried to do. Back in my overrated Drake video, I specifically mentioned that Drake didn't necessarily start with this sound, and I do need to retract on that just a little bit and offer some context to what I meant. When I said Drake didn't start with this sound, it's not to make him come across as if he's a fraud or as if he doesn't know Toronto culture. To me, it just comes across as if Drake wasn't being authentic, but I can attribute that to the fact that maybe him being a new artist, he wanted to hold back on his own culture because he knows that he needs to get bigger in this culture if he wants to thrive in the market. In doing so, you can't just immediately start with your own sound. Drake coming in with Toronto slang and making certain beats and certain songs and certain records probably wouldn't have went over well had he started this back in 2008, 2009. So I do understand if he was afraid to bring that culture over into the US, because who would really have listened to that and would have been, you know, musically mature enough to handle the huge cultural impact it would have had at that time? Well, we got little glimpses of it here and there throughout every project. We got a little bit of it on Thank Me Later. You got a little bit of it on Nothing Was the Same. A little bit of it on If You're Reading This Is Too Late. A lot more of it on Views, because Drake at that point knew he was a solidified artist. So I can put what I want out here now. I can start experimenting. You know, you have the fan base, you have the following, you have the people that are going to support you regardless. You can start making these moves and taking these risks, knowing that you're going to be set up for later and be just fine. That's why so much of other cultures were included on the More Life record, because Drake wanted to make this an international playlist. It wasn't necessarily meant to be enjoyed by hip-hop or rap fans, which in my opinion does make me a little upset, because it's marketed as a hip-hop rap album. It doesn't say pop, it doesn't say Afrobeat, it doesn't say dance hall. All the things that were included on the record, it never mentions those. So it being marketed as hip-hop / rap, and that being people's defense as to why it sounds the way it sounds, is a little bit underhanded in my opinion. I don't like the way that was marketed. I don't like how it was marketed as a playlist when it was really an album. But again, Drake being Drake, I think it was definitely a good portion in his career. I think it was good timing for him to release something like this if you wanted to push the Toronto culture out there, and even include some UK culture in there if you wanted to. Per rumors and speculation that Drake has been signed to you know, to the Grime, you know, he's in with them, so I don't know for sure. I can't confirm that. And that's one thing I do want you to understand. More Life was not meant to be an album to be enjoyed by modern day hip hop fans and people who had an expectation of Drake to be on that If You're Reading This Is Too Late vibe, because I don't even know if we're gonna get that Drake back ever again. I seriously doubt it at this point. What Drake tried to do with this most recent record, in my opinion, is a representation of what he's gonna try to do in the future, which is bring new cultures into the sound, keep bringing new slang into the sound, keep adopting it, keep using it, and then we're at one point we're not even going to be listening to hip hop and rap. We're going to be listening to all these different genres, and it being marketed within the hip hop culture. Don't get me wrong, I don't have an issue with other sounds, but let me know what I'm getting into before you market this a certain way. That's another thing that I wanted to touch on, is people comparing More Life to Kendrick's Damn album. Like, oh man, Damn also More Life. It's really not the way people make it seem. More Life being marketed as a playlist instead of an album would definitely hurt its album sales. Kendrick doing 600,000 first week is definitely extremely impressive, but had More Life been marketed as what it was instead of what Drake was trying for it to be, then it probably would have sold significantly more. No one mentions that because they're really easy to hate on Drake, and they want any excuse to say any other rapper is better than Drake. So I get the sentiment there, but at the same time, this not being marketed the way it should have been for what it really was definitely hurt Drake's album sales. Playlist. It was a great business move, and it was a great move for Drake's culture and what he wanted to push forward, but when you compare it to what we want from hip-hop, it didn't hit the mark for me. And those are the reasons why I genuinely like If You're Reading This Is Too Late, because it felt a lot more rap infested. It felt connected to the culture a lot more than his previous projects. It felt like Drake wanted to actually get into that spot, want to be considered in your top 5. It seemed like he was aiming for that spot. That's also bringing forth the conversation of Meek Mill. Like, a lot of people think Meek Mill was just taking L's, and that really wasn't the case. I mean, Meek Mill did lose the battle, but he may have in fact won the war, if the war is hurting Drake's reputation, because now people don't even believe Drake writes his own songs anymore, which, I mean, who wants that stigma? Meek Mill definitely took an L for starting it and then losing it when it comes to bar for bar and overall good songs, because Back to Back, I believe, was nominated for a Grammy. It's a diss song. But he definitely did hurt Drake's reputation, and now everyone is accrediting every part of Drake's albums to Quentin Miller. Those are my opinions. My favorite Drake album has to be...
No, make a decision Jesus. Already. Like,
I'm trying. Oh my god. How about I make a playlist out of the best songs on If You're Reading This Is Too Late, and I make a playlist from the best songs on Nothing Was the Same, and I combine it and call it Nothing Was Too Late. How about that? That's what I want to do. That's my favorite Drake albums. I'm gonna make my own Drake album, and that's what it's gonna be, and you're gonna like it and you're gonna accept it. So Thank you guys for watching. It's been Shawn C. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. I think. I'm going this way.